October 31st, 2018. Detective Constable Joe Ryan stepped into the courtyard of a red brick manor house in Hampstead, London, with a search warrant in hand. He saw former Chinese takeaway worker Jian Wen sitting inside a brand new black Mercedes-Benz. He walked up to the car and tapped on the window and informed Wen that they needed to search the house. But Wen wasn't ready to give in, so the officers surrounded the car, removing all thoughts of escape. "It would be much easier if we had your keys to open the door, otherwise we'll have to break in," Ryan said. Realizing she had no way out, Wen finally unlocked the car door and allowed the officers into the £5 million mansion. Inside the house, police found Wen's Chinese housemate, Yadi Zhang, £69,000 in cash, several laptops, a pink USB stick hidden inside a metal tin, 2 €500 bills, and a handwritten note with a list of passwords tucked behind an iPhone case. But the real shock would come when authorities discovered 61,000 Bitcoin worth over £3 billion in today's value. However, it wasn't until 3 years later, in 2021, that the police pieced together the haul's whole picture. But by then, the real mastermind, Wen's housemate Yadi Zhang, had disappeared, being a fugitive wanted for engineering a massive investment fraud in China. How did these two women end up with one of the largest Bitcoin stashes ever seized by law enforcement? Born in 1981 to parents with no wealth, she met a British man in China and married him. She was 7 months pregnant in 2007 when they moved to the UK and settled in Halifax, West Yorkshire. But life wasn't easy for Wen due to her controlling and abusive husband. She got a divorce in 2010 and moved to Leeds. She obtained a diploma in law and a degree in economics for business. However, to make ends meet, she resorted to working menial jobs. Her declared income was a mere £12,800, which is nothing compared to what she spends daily some years later. Fast forward to 2017 when she moved to London to find better opportunities, but really didn't add up to much. A single mother in her mid-30s working as a Chinese takeaway worker, all until one night. One evening, after finishing her shift, she scrolled through WeChat when an ad caught her eye, seeking a Mandarin-speaking assistant in London. She called the number and was told to go to the Royal Garden Hotel, a 5-star luxury hotel on Kensington High Street, London. There she met Yadi Zhang, or as the Chinese law enforcement knew her, Qimin Qian. She was wearing a traditional Thai dress. She looked very young. Her skin was brilliant, says Wen, recalling that encounter. Zhang told Wen she had just arrived in the UK and needed an assistant, a translator, and a carer. She owned a jewelry business and had come to set up shop in the UK. She offered to pay Wen £4,000 a month in cash. This was a pretty good deal for Wen, especially when she had no references. Zhang told her that she needed new clothes, a bank account, and a permanent place to live. Now that doesn't sound like a difficult job, right? Only if that's all she had to do. When she started working for Zhang, she arranged a fake gas bill for Zhang to use as a proof of address on a bank application. She negotiated with a famous real estate agent, Chesterton's, for a tenancy at a Hampstead mansion at the rate of £17,300 a month. But Wen wasn't complaining. Many people wouldn't if they also became a joint tenant of such a mansion. What's more, Wen got £40,000 in her bank, which she claimed came from a boyfriend for home improvements. From working in a takeaway to living in a mansion, dealing with hefty sums of money and taking trips to Thailand. She also took a delivery of £200,000 in cash at the Hampstead house. But despite all the perks, she was uneasy about the shady dealings her employer delegated to her, which brings us to Yadi Zhang's story. Between 2014 and 2017, Yadi Zhang orchestrated a £5 billion investment fraud in China. A company named Tianjin Lanshan Geroi Technology promised investors massive returns, up to 300%. The scheme ran smoothly, pulling in money from more than 128,000 people, until Chinese authorities started asking questions. By then, it was too late. Zhang had already converted much of the stolen money into Bitcoin. Unlike traditional banking, Bitcoin has no central authority, no way to freeze accounts, no easy way to track who owns what. It was the perfect escape plan. And so, in 2017, she disappeared. Authorities launched a massive investigation in China, arresting 50 people linked to the scam. Some were convicted, but Zhang wasn't among them. She had managed to slip through the cracks, carrying billions on a Lenovo laptop. Upon arrival in London, she had a new name and a St. Kitts and Nevis passport with a birth year of 1990, although she was born in 1978. She had everything to get by in a new country, all but a front person who would deal on her behalf. That's where Jian Wen came in. Despite getting uncomfortable with her employer's pursuits, she didn't think to question her. At least that's what she told the court in her trial. Zhang had told Wen that her wealth came from Bitcoin mining, along with jewelry, and was clean money. The next task Zhang gave Wen was a little more complicated than the previous ones. Wen was tasked to buy property. She found a £23.5 million mansion with 8 bedrooms and an indoor swimming pool on Lyndhurst Road in Hampstead. Wen was supposed to buy it in her name, then transfer it to Zhang later. Wen also communicated Zhang's desire to purchase the property in Bitcoin, but couldn't come up with the details about the fund's source. However, the deal still went through. Anwar Siufi of Exmore Partners, a registered broker, converted the Bitcoin to cash and provided a report that verified the fund's source for the purchase all in Wen's name. Exmore Partners converted £850,000 worth of Bitcoin and sent it to the law firm as a house deposit. That was in 2018, which Zhang spent traveling across continental Europe. Wen accompanied her on these journeys, which were done via car to minimize border checks. Interestingly, these travels are documented in photos of both women. The photos were always snapped separately, so both couldn't be seen together. Nevertheless, amid their frequent travel visits and Bitcoin conversations, they didn't see a series of setbacks coming their way. Back in London, the house deal collapsed after the seller asked for more money, so they found another home worth £12.5 million in Totteridge Common, London, with 8 bedrooms, a home cinema, gym and sauna. But the tide wasn't in their favour anymore. Wen's bank shut down her account due to the influx of unaccounted sums. Opening a new account led to an immediate closure. The second blow came when the law firm pressed Wen for more information about Zhang's crypto funds. The firm asked for the Bitcoin addresses on the public blockchain database to trace the fund's history, but Zhang provided wrong addresses. The broker Siufi ran off with their almost £1 million Bitcoin for the second property, Totteridge Common deal, whereas the first property deal came to a halt. Wen finally provided the correct blockchain address to the firm, but the traced history didn't corroborate with Zhang's version. A mined Bitcoin comes from a few sources, but Zhang's Bitcoin had hundreds of sources, including crypto exchanges, which is a big red flag for money laundering. Next came a stoppage by Dublin immigration due to Zhang's visa issues. Irish officials sent Zhang back to Vienna, where she had come from. Wen returned to London shortly, joined by her son, who went to a British private school paid for by Zhang. Around that time, Wen did something that proved to be incriminating evidence. She snapped notebook pages containing password details for Bitcoin wallets and saved the photos on a pink USB. The same USB that was confiscated by Detective Ryan a few days later. It's not clear how he learned about Wen's activities, but he emailed her on October 10th, after her £850,000 held by the law firm was frozen. Despite getting on the police's radar, Wen worked for Zhang. She helped her convert Bitcoin by trading with random people in London. Wen collected cash while Zhang transferred the coins. In a message to a buyer, Wen asked to avoid locations covered by CCTV. For a woman who would plead not guilty on the grounds that she didn't know what Zhang was doing, this is quite extraordinary. You would only want to avoid CCTV in a deal when you know it to be shady. Nevertheless, she handed over £400,000 in cash from these trades between 2019 and 2020. During this time, Wen also attempted to purchase property in Dubai with the help of a broker Michael Burke, who helped her buy 2 apartments in Dubai in late 2019. Burke also helped Wen sell over £2 million worth of Bitcoin. The police conducted their second search at the Hampstead mansion in August 2020, 2 years after the first raid. But this time, they didn't find Zhang, whom they wanted to interview. In fact, no one has been able to find her since then. In May 2021, Detective Ryan came again for the third and final search. His team had finally unearthed Zhang's identity. By then, Wen was living in a 2-room flat in South London with her son and working in a restaurant. This search led to Wen's arrest and the discovery of a handwritten note stating, "If they break the BTC codes, I'm dead." Wen failed to explain the note satisfactorily in the court later. She covered it up by claiming that the investigation had made her suicidal. She had been charged with multiple counts of money laundering and criminal possession and was facing up to 14 years in prison. Meanwhile, the police had started unlocking Zhang's Bitcoin wallet containing hundreds of millions of pounds. In July 2021, they discovered £1.2 billion worth of Bitcoin in the 2 largest wallets. Later, it turned out that over £100 million worth of Bitcoin had already been siphoned away from the seized wallets. Someone had moved the funds, but the police couldn't identify the culprit. However, reports state that some of the stolen Bitcoin appeared on Chinese exchange after she fled the UK. While Zhang couldn't be found, her diaries were, and they revealed very interesting details about her goals. Apparently, she dreamed of buying a tiny European country in the Balkans. She wanted to use the money to build Europe's biggest Buddhist temple in Liberland, an unrecognized microstate on the Danube. She had even designed and set aside millions for her own crown jewels. What's more, she hoped that the Dalai Lama would declare her to be a reincarnated goddess. Like, really? While Detective Ryan and his team ruined Zhang or Qian's long-term plans, Jian had to face justice and pay for her crimes. She pleaded not guilty, trying to believe she wasn't a criminal but a victim. The British Crown Prosecution Service, CPS, saw things differently. They perceived Wen as Zhang's trusted lieutenant, someone who had willingly helped her launder billions of pounds in dirty money. They pointed to the fake documents, the secretive transactions, the desperate attempts to explain away Zhang's wealth. And most damning of all, how she had continued working with Zhang even after the first police raid. Wen's defense? She was tricked. She admitted to making transactions, opening bank accounts, and traveling with Zhang, but she said she had no reason to suspect anything illegal. Nevertheless, her lawyer turned the focus back on Zhang, calling her a master manipulator. He called Wen the police's consolation prize, since the real culprit had disappeared. The jury ruled not guilty for 10 out of 12 charges. The Crown Prosecution Service decided to move forward with a retrial. The 2 charges that the jury could not reach a verdict on remained. This time, a 3rd charge was added, linked to another Bitcoin wallet. Altogether, the total amount Wen was accused of laundering reached £1 million. In March 2023, the jury delivered its verdict, finding Wen guilty on 1 count of money laundering. She was given 6 years and 8 months in prison. But Zhang was still missing, and so was a significant portion of the Bitcoin. Interpol issued a red notice for Zhang, an international alert requesting her arrest. With Zhang still missing and Wen behind bars, one major question remains: what happens to the Bitcoin? The UK government currently holds over £2 billion worth of Bitcoin seized from Zhang's wallets, but despite its connection to a massive fraud case in China, the Chinese government has not formally requested its return. The British Crown Prosecution Service, CPS, is handling civil recovery proceedings, meaning the UK has the legal right to seize and redistribute the funds. However, given the international nature of this case, diplomatic negotiations could still change the outcome. Meanwhile, the 128,000 victims of Zhang's fraud scheme in China are unlikely to see any compensation. The legal process in China recovered some stolen funds, but with billions still missing, justice for the victims remains uncertain. For now, the case is closed, but the search for Zhang and the missing Bitcoin continues.